welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Interventions and Detentions. It's another week and another episode, and I'm your host, Brad. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode 2:32. 32 episodes. Man, we're just cruising down the highway of podcasts and Interventions and Detentions episodes. Today, I think we're going to hit on a topic that everybody is probably relating to right now. I guess I like to call it mayhem. What actually works in the month of May, folks? Maybe it'd be easier to discuss what doesn't work in May, to be honest with you. If you're listening to this right now and it's May is here, there's a really good chance you're feeling it, folks. The energy feels different. The noise level is a little higher. In my building, it's a lot higher. And I'm not talking to teachers, folks. I'm talking to kids. Students who have had those expectations down all year suddenly look like they've never heard or seen them before in their life. Kind of like a deer in the headlights. We're talking about the end of the year behavior dip. Slide, dip, whatever you want to call it. And I want to start with this because I think it's something that matters. And if things feel harder right now, you're not imagining it, folks. This is not one of those moments where we say, hey, we just need to tighten things up a little bit, get our classroom management down a little bit better, or, we need to go back and revisit expectations, boys and girls. I mean, that's part of it, but it's not the whole story. There's actually a consistent pattern across schools this time of year. Many districts report up to a 15 to 25% increase in office referrals between the months of March and May, compared to the middle of the year. At the same time, research has shown that student engagement and task persistence, tend to drop in the final 6 to 8 weeks of school, especially right here at the elementary level. So if you feel like you're repeating yourself more, teachers, if you feel like small things are turning into bigger things faster, principals, if you feel like your class just doesn't quite have the same rhythm that it had in February or maybe September or October, that's real. It's a real thing. And once we acknowledge it, we can actually respond to it in a way that helps instead of just reacting out of pure frustration, which is so easy to do. So let's get into the why, because this is where I think we sometimes really just miss the mark. There are 3 major drivers that I see every year. The first one is loss of structure. Even in really strong classrooms, structure naturally starts to loosen a little bit this time of year. Not because teachers are doing anything wrong or anything different, but because the school environment itself is changing. Schedules often shift. There are more assemblies, field trips, special days, more special days than typical days. And every time that schedule changes, it chips away at the predictability. There's a strong connection between predictability and behavior. When students know exactly what to expect, they feel more secure and are more likely to meet expectations. When that predictability drops, behavior often follows that drop. So what we sometimes label as defiance is really a response from kids to that inconsistency. The second driver is simply mental fatigue. By this point in the year, students are tired. Teachers are also tired. Principals are very tired. Everyone is operating with a little less patience and a little less stamina than they had in August. And even right now with, lovely daylight saving time, it doesn't get dark here until after 9 o'clock. And that means kids are staying up later, they're getting up earlier, they're getting less sleep, and it's just impacting every little thing that they do. There's research in cognitive science out there that shows sustained attention declines over long periods without meaningful breaks. By spring, students are simply not bringing that same level of focus that they did earlier in the school year. And here's where we really have to be careful. It's easy to say, they should know better by now. I say it too, folks. And they probably do know better. But knowing better and consistently doing better are really two different things, especially when the mental energy is low. So, what looks like a lack of effort is often more a lack of capacity in that moment. Now, the third piece is anticipation of what's coming next. Students know the end of the year is coming. Summer's close. Routines are just about to change for most of them. And that anticipation shows up in different ways. For some students, it comes out as excitement. For others, it comes out as restlessness. And for some, it actually shows up as anxiety. I've seen all three scenarios. Because not every student is going into a structured, predictable summer environment, sadly enough. Some students are already anticipating the loss of that routine, a loss of support, or uncertainty about what their days will look like, the loss of their relationships, whether it be friends, teachers. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's students trying to manage a transition that they don't fully understand or that they're really fully prepared for. Once those behaviors do start to dip and slide, the response that we give as adults really does matter. And this is where I think schools and honestly, leaders and principals can unintentionally make things more difficult. The first mistake is assuming this is purely a classroom management issue. It's not, okay? Most of the time it's not. When we say things like, we just need to tighten things up, or we need to go back and revisit those expectations and rules, what teachers often hear is, hey, you're not doing enough. And in most cases, that's just not accurate. Teachers are often working harder right now than they were earlier in the year because, again, it's a little more difficult right now. They're just working against different variables. The second mistake is trying to add more. Things like more reminders, more consequences for those behaviors, more initiatives, more things that teachers are supposed to implement in the final weeks of school. Okay. Class list, final exams, grade cards. Are we switching rooms next year? For us, are we switching schools and closing a building down? Lots of stressors in our building right now. So clarity matters more than volume. Consistency matters more than the intensity. The third mistake that often can be made is inconsistency across the building. Whether your building is big or small, those expectations, if expectations in the hallway don't match expectations in the classroom, if one adult addresses behavior one way and another ignores it, if the response to that same behavior changes depending on the day, students are going to recognize that and they're going to pick up on that quickly. And when consistency drops at the adult level, behavior becomes more unpredictable at the student level. So if the usual responses aren't fully working, the question becomes, what actually does? What does work? That's where we're going to go next. So if we know behavior tends to dip and slide at this time of year, pretty common thing. I don't think that's a surprise. Like, oh, hey, I didn't know that things were going to get a little more stressful and difficult late April and early May until the rest of the school year. If we know that that's what is happening, the next question is one that really matters. What actually works? What can we do? What actually works? Not in theory and not definitely in August, because August looks a lot different than May, folks. We know that. What works right now in late April and early May when everyone is a little tired and the schedule feels like it's changing every other day? The first thing is this: go back to structure, but keep it simple. It's not the time to introduce something new or overhaul your management system in your classroom, because I know it feels like it's probably not working real well. But it's the time to anchor back into what already works and what you've been doing. Just make things clear transitions, clear expectations, and clear routines, and maybe repeating those directions for transitions, expectations, and routines over and over and over again. Maybe even having your students repeat them back to you. All right, boys and girls, tell me what it looks like when we walk in the hallway. Boys and girls, tell me what it looks like when I give you the 3, 2, 1, and go to transition back to your seats. What do I want to see? What do I want to hear? Let them tell you, because they know they have not forgotten those routines, expectations, and procedures. Even small things make that difference right now. How students are entering the room in the morning, what they do when they finish their work, how they line up. When those pieces are tight and predictable for kids, it reduces the number of decisions students have to make. And that alone makes a difference with behavior. There's research behind this as well. Studies on classroom management consistently show that clear, consistently reinforced routines can reduce disruptive behaviors by up to 30%, folks, especially in our elementary buildings. And here's the key. It's not about doing more. It's about doing the basics really, really well and really, really consistently. The second strategy is shorten the window for success, okay? It's okay to lower the bar a little bit and shorten that window. Earlier in the year, you might be able to sustain 25-minute independent work block without many issues at all, okay? Right now, that same block just might fall apart because the attention span just is not there. So instead of pushing through and getting frustrated, let's just adjust the structure a little bit. Let's break it into some smaller chunks. 10 minutes of focused work, a quick check-in, let's reset, then go again. It's not really lowering the bar or lowering the expectations as much as it is you're just adjusting the pathway to meet those expectations. Because attention spans and stamina are just different right now. I think we can all agree to that. The third piece is increase that positive narration, which is so hard to do when they're just wearing on you right now. And I want to be clear about it, what I mean by that, because it's not just generic praise, okay? It's specific, it's got to be intentional, and it's got to be constant. For example, I see this group already started. Thank you for getting your materials ready right away. That's exactly what lining up looks like. All those kinds of things. What this does is shift attention toward what's working instead of constantly reacting and focusing on what's not. There's a behavior principle at play here. Behavior that gets attention is more likely to be repeated. So when the majority of your attention is being focused on what's going toward correcting behavior, you can unintentionally reinforce the very thing that you're trying to reduce. Positive narration flips it, okay? The fourth strategy is one that I think gets overlooked probably the most, especially at this time of year. We have to really pre-correct before the moment. Before transitions, before hallway movement, before anything that has been a challenge recently, take 10 seconds and reset the expectations. Here's what this needs to look like, boys and girls. Or here's what I'm watching for. It's simple, but so powerful because you're not reacting after the fact. You're setting students up for success before the behavior even happens. And then the last one, and this might be the most important of all, stay calm, even when it's not calm. And again, really, really hard to do sometimes when we're tired and we're stressed and we're just wore out, but we got to stay calm, okay? In front of the kids, with the kids. I always tell teachers, you want to come to my office and not be calm, you want to scream, yell, cry, we'll shut the door and we'll do all those things together. It's okay, but we can't do those in front of kids, okay? We just can't. And I know it's hard. It's hard, but we can't. Because what students need right now is not more intensity, okay? They don't need to see the teeth gritting and the fist in the air. They don't. They need consistency. They need predictability. And they need to know that even when things feel a little off, the adults in the room are still steady, okay? Stay calm, stay steady. And it's not easy, like I said, when you're tired, but it makes such a big difference. So let's make this practical for a moment, because it's one thing to talk about strategies. We can talk about those all day long. It's another to actually picture what this looks like during a real school day. Think about a transition that's been rough for you lately. Maybe it's coming back from recess with the kids. Maybe it's lining up for specials. Maybe it's getting started after lunch, coming back to the classroom after lunch. Instead of waiting to see how it goes, you pause before it happens. You reset those expectations, like I said. You tighten the structure just for that moment, and you narrate what's going well as it's happening. It's like you're telling a story. And then if something does go off track, even for a second, you respond quickly, calmly, and consistently. No escalation, no long lectures, just clear and direct redirection. That's the shift, ladies and gentlemen. Or think about independent work time for a minute. If students are struggling to stay focused, instead of extending the time and hoping it improves, maybe try shrinking it. You give a clear, achievable window of time. You check in a little bit sooner, and you build momentum instead of trying to force endurance. Man, I like that. These are not big, complicated changes, okay? They're not like, oh, man, Brad is really smart. How did he come up with this? It's really common sense, but you got to stop and think about it for just a minute. They're strategies that are targeted. They're purposeful. And right now, targeted and purposeful matters more than anything else. Okay, guys, if you want to survive the month of May, try these little tools out. I think you're going to be happy with what you see. I want to shift this for a minute and talk from a leadership perspective, okay? Because how we respond to this as leaders, and it doesn't have to be just principals, assistant principals, counselors. It can be leaders in the building, okay? I feel like secretaries can be leaders, nurses can be leaders, SROs can be leaders, custodians can be leaders. Okay, they're adults and they show leadership and they model those things. How we respond to this as leaders matters just as much as what's happening in the classrooms. It's not the time to overwhelm teachers with new expectations. It's time to support what's already in place. That might look like this. Being visible in classrooms and hallways a little more than what you normally are. That's hard for me. And I think it's hard for any principal or other leader. You get busy with the end of the year stuff. And that's where I find myself right now. I'm summative evaluations for my classified and certified staff, thinking about just what we need to do to wrap things up, handbook changes, reading plans, all those things that need to be submitted before we walk out the door in June. Okay? Maybe helping more with transitions. Maybe reinforcing those expectations right alongside your teachers in that moment to help narrate what is going well. It might mean stepping in and saying, hey, I've got this when a situation escalates. Maybe have the teacher go take a little potty break or a walk down the hall to cool down for just a second. But it also means being really intentional with our messaging as leaders. If the message right now is, we need to tighten things up, teachers, without the context or support, it can feel more like criticism to our staff. If the message is, hey, guys, this is a tough stretch right now, and here's how we're going to support you through it, it lands and hits a little bit differently. There's also a consistency piece at the building level. Students should experience the same expectations, whether they're in the classroom or in the hallway with another adult or in a special or at the cafeteria, on the playground. And that only happens if we adults are aligned, okay? Because when consistency drops, behavior becomes way more unpredictable. We don't need that right now. I'll kind of leave you with this before we move on. The end of the year behavior dip is real, okay? It happens every year. And it's not a reflection of failure. It's a reflection of a long year, a lot of hard work, a lot of change in routines, and students who are navigating transition, whether they fully understand it or not. So the goal right now, as we enter May, is not perfection. It's not going back to how things felt in October either. The goal is just steadiness. Maybe I should even say steadfastness. I like that word. Remember, clear expectations, consistent routines, calm responses. The 3 C's: clear, consistent, and calm. And just getting a little bit better each day as you move toward the end of the year will go a long way. Okay? So let's take a minute and just ground this in what it actually feels like in a classroom right now today, because it's easy to talk about strategies, but if you're in it, it doesn't always feel strategic. It feels like this. You start a lesson, and within the first 2 minutes, you're already redirecting 3 different things. Someone's out of their seat. Someone's talking over you. Someone's arguing about something small that normally wouldn't even be an issue. And you catch yourself, teachers, thinking, we've done this all year. Why are we here again? Or you go to line up, and what used to take, 20 seconds is now taking like 2 minutes. And it's not one big behavior, it's 10 small ones stacked all together, one on top of the other. And that's what makes this time of year feel so draining, I think. It's not usually major incidences, and I can attest to that. I don't feel like, knock on wood, I'm going to jinx myself, but we haven't had anything major in our building for a long time. It's just a lot of those little things that stack up to make it feel so heavy. That constant low-level redirection that just wears you down over time. Boys and girls, stop running in the hall. Boys and girls, let's walk. Let's walk. I think I've said that a lot lately. Hey, no, voices off. We're inside. Inside voices, boys and girls. Ooh, why do they not just do it? But there's actually research that speaks to all of this. Studies on teacher stress show that frequent low-level disruptions are more strongly correlated with burnout than those occasional major incidences. That's interesting, and that makes sense, because it's not that one big moment that really drains you. It's the 100 small ones, like fingernails on the chalkboard. And here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. You start to question yourself. Like, you start thinking, am I doing something differently? Did I lose track of something here? Why does this feel harder than it did just a few months ago? And again, I want to come back to this. It's not a step backward. It's just a different phase of the year, and it requires a different response. That's all. That's all it is. One of the biggest shifts this time of year is that small inconsistencies have that bigger impact. Earlier in the year, you might just kind of brush it off and let something go, and it doesn't really change the overall environment. Right now, it stacks up. Okay? One missed expectation turns into 2. 2 turns into 5. And before you know it, the tone of the room just feels different. And this is what I call the compounding effect. And it works both ways. Negative behaviors can compound quickly, but so can positive. Positive structure can compound just as quickly. If you tighten just one transition, if you consistently reinforce one expectation, if you bring clarity back to just one part of the day, you will start to feel a shift. Not all at once, okay? I'm not gonna like make it better than what is really gonna be, folks. It's gonna take some time. It's not gonna happen all at once, but you'll feel it, and if you do it enough, it's gonna build momentum in a good, positive way. There's a concept in behavioral science called the broken windows theory, which suggests that visible signs of disorder can lead to more disorder. In a classroom, that doesn't mean being overly rigid and punitive. It just means that when expectations are unclear or inconsistently enforced, it creates space for more off-task behavior. But the opposite is also true. When expectations are clear and consistently reinforced, even in small ways, it can create stability. So right now, the goal is not to try and fix everything, even though you might feel that way, okay? It's to identify the moments that matter the most and be extremely consistent in those moments. This is one of the most effective things that I have seen teachers do really, really well this time of year. They don't try to power through a rough moment. They reset it. We've been kind of talking about that reset button. Let's say a transition doesn't go well. Instead of moving on and carrying that energy into the next part of the day, the teacher stops. They bring students back. They do it again. Calmly, clearly, consistently, and without frustration. And that reset is going to matter because it sends a message. It sends a message that this is still the expectation, boys and girls. And now, what some people are thinking, we don't have time for that. Okay, I get that. But here's the reality, folks. You either take that 30 seconds to reset it, or you're going to spend the next 10 minutes managing the ripple effects of not resetting it. Reset moments are not about control. They're about clarity. They give students another chance to get it right. And they reestablish the tone of the room. The resets reestablish the tone of the room. I think that's important. Let's talk about language for a moment because this is another area where small shifts can make a big, big difference. The way we respond to behavior right now matters. And what works earlier in the year, or maybe worked earlier in the year, doesn't always land the same way in May. Okay? Instead of longer explanations or lectures or shorter, more direct language can be way more effective. Things like, try that again. Or, show me what that should look like. Or, boys and girls, let's reset. It's simple, it's clear, and it's neutral, which is really kind of nice. When students are already fatigued, adding more words doesn't usually help. They are just going to tone that out after about 4 words in. And it often overwhelms them in the moment. Another shift is keeping tone as neutral as possible. Again, we talked about that. Don't get escalated. Teachers, I know it's hard. Principals, I know it's hard. I have trouble with this myself. It's easy for Brad to sit here on Interventions and Detentions and say, folks, stay neutral. Be calm. Just be calm. Just breathe. Okay. Easy to say, way harder to do in the moment. Things that we can't do. Don't be sarcastic. Try not to get frustrated and try not to be overly emotional in that moment. Remind yourself, steady. Be steady. Okay, call yourself Steady Eddie if you have to. I don't care. Just be steady. Because students are already more reactive this time of year than any other time of year. And when we adults and our tone escalates, it often escalates the situation. Nobody needs that. There's also value in acknowledging effort quickly. Like, I saw that. That's better. Or, thank you. Thank you for fixing that the first time and right away. These little quick acknowledgments reinforce the behavior that you want without turning it into a real big moment. And kids will notice that. They love the small moments just as much as they love the big moments. Every classroom has a few students who feel this shift more than others, okay? We know that. And this is the time of year where their behavior can really escalate quickly. For these students, the key is proactive support. We can't wait for the behavior to happen. We got to get ahead of it, okay? That might look like checking in with a student before a known trigger time, maybe a certain time of the day, or maybe a certain subject. Check in with them, kind of give them a little pep talk, giving quick reminders of those expectations to those kids, and providing a small adjustment to support success. Maybe it's a break. Maybe it's send them down to the office for to run a task for you. Maybe sensory room break if you guys have that in your buildings. Be proactive and think about those things ahead of time before a situation arises. There's also a relationship component here that we got to talk about. Students who are struggling often need more connection, not less, even if the behavior is challenging. And that doesn't mean lowering the expectations or lowering the bar again. It just means pairing those expectations with support. Research in school climate shows that students with strong connections to at least one adult in the building are significantly less likely to engage in repeated disruptive behavior. When they connect with somebody, it just shifts behavior and it minimizes bad behaviors. They have somebody that cares about them, somebody that checks in on them. And at this time of year, that connection matters more than ever. All right, let's bring it all together. As we wrap all of this up, okay, I want to bring it back to a few key ideas because it's easy to feel like you need to change everything when things get harder, but that's That's not the goal. The goal right now, again, is clarity. And let's talk about those 3 C's again: clear expectations, clear routines, clear responses. Okay? The goal is consistency, not perfection, not intensity, consistency. And the goal is steadiness. Because students don't need everything to feel perfect right now. They don't, okay? They just need it to feel predictable. The end of the year behavior slide, dip, whatever you want to call it, is not something you can eliminate completely. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Wish I could. But it's something that you can manage. We can manage. And when you manage it well, you protect the learning environment. You support your students and you make this final stretch. I think we got 20 days. Make this final stretch feel a whole lot more manageable, okay? So if you're feeling this right now, just know you're not alone. It's not just you. It's not just your building. It's not just your principal. It's everywhere. It's mayhem, boys and girls. It's a tough stretch of the year, but it's also an important one because how we finish really matters, and it matters for our kids, not just academically. That's why we're here, yes, but it really matters in how students experience school. We want to make it a positive experience, okay? Let's just end it right there. Let's keep it positive, boys and girls. Thanks for being here again this week for another episode of Interventions and Detentions with Brad. If this helped, share it with someone who's in the middle of the crisis right now. Just, as always, keep doing the work that matters most. We appreciate all the educators, administrators, principals, teachers, support staff, SROs, cafeteria, custodians. You guys have a tough job. Nobody knows what that job's like till they walk a mile or a hallway in your shoes. So just keep doing the work because it does matter. And if nobody has told you lately, I'm going to tell you right now, you matter. Thank you for doing what you do for your students, for your building, for your community each and every day. Tune in again next week. Interventions and Detentions. We drop every Friday at 8 a.m. If you have any ideas for episode topics that you'd like or special guests, reach out. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. You might even just get some swag like a t-shirt. I appreciate your support and you tuning in each and every week. Give me some feedback, folks. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time on Interventions and Detentions. Remember, it's where the real learning begins. See you next time.